That is how you come up on top. After a horrible loss to Nashville, which actually put us below Nashville in the standings for coming into this game, we have now jumped right back up into third in the Central with a 4-2 dominating, well, not really dominating, but an aggressive comeback win against the Boston Bruins. In a game that was on national television, it was on TNT, and we get Kenny Albert. And I don't have to listen to Darren Pang again. It's really nice, like legitimately. It is so nice to listen to Kenny Albert, Eddie Olczyk, Keith Jones, anybody other than Darren Pang. It is incredible to hear. So this game, which started out on TNT with an interview from both of the Folignos, because Nick Foligno had played in his 1,000th game last night when Boston beat Chicago 2-1 in overtime. And, of course, they start out with a conversation between Nick Foligno and Marcus Foligno talking about, it's the Foligno brothers. Let's get it going. Let's get it started. So, fun topic of discussion there. But, in the meantime, it's a hockey game that they're trying to get to. And you couldn't avoid talking about the trade deadline, obviously, for us, because Tyson Jost suits up in this game with the number 10. And it was a funny quote that he said as they were showing him getting his picture taken already for Minnesota. Right here, he said, 17's my number, but some big tough guy had it. So he was sticking with 10 with the face shield, with the bubble and all that. And apparently I learned later on tonight that one, he's recovering from a broken jaw, so the bubble is warranted, obviously to protect his jaw. But two, he's red-green colorblind. And I mean, yeah, really? He's red-green. He's legitimately red-green colorblind. So he said if there's any turnovers, I am blaming it 100% on my colorblindness. Which isn't bad. I didn't realize he had it until that was said on the broadcast. So, yikes. And overall, for Tyson Jost, he had a pretty solid game. He was getting aggressive, getting some shots on net. He was trying out there. I'll admit, he was trying. He was still stuck on the fourth line with Duhaime and Bukestad, but they got more time to go out there and pressure. And it looked a little weird to start, but I kind of started getting used to it a little bit more, and I'm expecting some good things out of him. So hopefully we keep this up. Hopefully he gets a goal here, because he's got 7 more games at home to get a goal before they head back out on the road. But I had a lot of notes leading into the beginning of this game. Literally, this whole section from like here to here is all just the pregame, because I was bored and I decided to write a bunch of other stuff since it's the TNT broadcast. They're trying to make Inside the NBA with Inside the NHL, because they got Biz, they have Liam, who now peddles drugs to people on the TNT cast. Well, he doesn't do that, but he brought out smelling salts, and Biz chugged a Red Bull before they started their show. So they're morons at TNT. They're all morons, but we love them. Anyway, I also mentioned what Tokic and Eddie Olczyk were saying, because they were actually giving good advice on what was happening with Minnesota and Boston. Boston, specifically Jeremy Swayman, had been 9-0-1 in his last 10 games. He was rolling for Boston. And he's still probably their leading guy, because I said it says 9-0-1 since Rask officially retired from hockey, which it sucks for Rask to go out the way he did, but he was incredible for them. He was incredible. And Swayman is filling those shoes pretty nicely as of right now. Let's see if hopefully he can win a Stanley Cup with them soon, just not this year or any year the Wild are in competition. Anyway, there was no Patrice Bergeron for Boston tonight, so they actually struggled a little bit in the faceoff circle. And that's where guys like Eriksson, Ek, and Hartman, they kind of dominated. Tomas Nosek for Boston was also dominating too, so it was still pretty even as far as faceoffs go. But that's when I noticed at the front of this game, we were now in the wild card spot, like I said at the beginning, because Nashville had won either last night or the night before. We had 3 days off. And in between those 3 days, there was a spirited practice from Minnesota and Dean Evason, where there was a lot of F-bombs being dropped, a lot of frustration just being vented out, and they just were pissed off. And it's a good thing they were pissed off, because they came out swinging and firing on all cylinders. As it starts out with the grief line getting the start right away, and they just keep throwing their weight around, and dominating people. Foligno ends up leveling Clifton like in the first 2 minutes, and he was slow to get up because he was originally getting chased around by Jordan Greenway, but then got sandwiched between the two with Foligno taking the bigger approach on him, and he was down for a little bit. He slowly got up, but it was a huge hit. Clean hit, too, because it was right up at the shoulder. Clifton just got leveled and just flung around. And it wasn't like Foligno was the only one dishing out hits. Pretty much everybody from Minnesota was starting to throw their weight around, and this was a chippy game. Because Boston is Boston. They're chippy. They like to throw weight around. They like to piss people off. Specifically, Trent Frederick and Charlie McAvoy. Frederick, obviously notorious when the last time that the Wild played Boston, Trent Frederick was the guy who leveled Kaprizov's face into the boards. So obviously they don't like him and he doesn't like them. So, eventually, we'll get to that later. But Minnesota gets a power play early on. A Carlo tripping penalty gives Minnesota the first power play of the game. And Evason finally takes my advice. He finally says, okay, 4 forwards and 1 D is not working for us. It's kind of stupid. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep the forward lines together and we're just going to throw out 2 defensemen. We're going to make it feel like it's 5-on-5. What happens on the first power play? They score. I was literally saying that I don't know how long back. I'm willing to bet the Calgary video, I was probably saying that. Probably saying just switch it to 3 forwards and 2 defensemen. Just play 5-on-5 when it's a power play. It's perfectly fine and it works. And lo and behold, it works. Kaprizov gets a power play goal, his 31st of the season with 13:05 left in the first period. Assists go to Goligoski, his 26th, and Spurgeon gets his 21st assist of the season. Basically, it was a good face-off win by Ryan Hartman, and he also provided the screen in front that allowed Jeremy Swayman not to see anything. Shot goes right past Swayman and into the net, 1-0 Minnesota. And at 11:08, at least what I wrote down here, Tyson Jost is having some good hustle. He was actually, fighting for pucks. He was admittedly a smaller guy than Nico Sturm, so a lot of the time he was almost like a pest in a way. But it was good because he was providing pressure and he was causing pucks to go the other way. And also a little bit later after that, right in between 11:08 and 10:09 for some reason, not sure why I put a timestamp on this or didn't, Brandon Duhaime drops the gloves of Trent Frederick. They were talking about this during the TV break and they basically said, Frederick said, all right, Duhaime, you want to go? And Duhaime, of course, says, yeah, I'll go. And it was a good fight. It was a good one. Duhaime threw a left-handed punch at Frederick that managed to stun him for a little bit. Frederick came back with a flurry of his own. Duhaime kept fighting. It was a spirited bout. It was good for both teams. And both guys managed to get stick taps, pats on the back from their coaches as soon as they got back to the bench. And then at 10:19, Eric Holla, former Minnesota Wild player, which there were a lot of in this game. Well, I won't say a lot, but Charlie Coyle, Eric Holla, those are the 2 I can think of. But Eric Holla gets a tripping penalty at 10:19. I still like Holla. I wrote that down here too. Not sure why. I think I gotta rearrange these notes. But at 10 minutes in, Kaprizov gets a breakaway from a beautiful pass from Zuccarello. Kaprizov tries to out-dangle Swayman and keep the puck on the ice. Swayman is able to stretch out and stop him. So it didn't work that time. But even Steven between Kaprizov and Swayman so far. And Minnesota on this power play just wasn't able to get enough time in on the zone. They just they had the problems they always have. A lot of turnovers at the blue line, and they just never enter the zone right. So that power play doesn't go. And also, the officials in this game, I won't say, well, they weren't bad, but they missed a few calls. Specifically, on both teams, there were obvious occurrences for too many men penalties. Minnesota had one early on that could have been called a penalty, and Boston had one later on that was a little more obvious, and yet neither were called penalties. So I guess it's fine if you just don't call it for either side, because that's just the way it goes. That's what they're calling. All right, no too many men penalty. So be it. And Foligno was still throwing his weight around. He puts another big hit on Carlo at 7:13. And the first period for Minnesota was aggressive. It was a heavy forecheck, and they were getting into the zone and making plays. But, again, Boston still has a lot of playmakers. They were still going to stay in this game, whether or not the first period went completely Minnesota's way, which it felt like it did. And then Kaprizov gets another breakaway, again from a great lead pass from Zuccarello. And this time, since he wasn't able to, get the deke on Swayman and deke him out of his shoes, he just says, screw it, I'm just going to shoot it top shelf. And it goes in. He has his second of the game, his 32nd of the season at 5:32 left in the first period. Zuccarello with a great lead pass gets his 42nd assist of the season. Spurgeon gets his 22nd assist of the season and his second point of the game. So, and what was funny about this goal is Kaprizov had to shoot a bouncing puck. The puck never settled down. So as soon as he shot it, the puck went flat on his stick, and he managed to just almost knuckle puck this one right in the bar, right below the bar, and go top shelf on Jeremy Swayman. 2-0 Minnesota. They're rolling. But again, like I said, it's Boston. They're not going to give up very easily, and they don't hear Craig Smith gets his 14th of the season at 3:01 left in the first period. Frederick gets his 9th assist of the season, and Carlo gets his 7th of the season. Basically, Trent Frederick throws his puck on net. It deflects either off a Dumba's skate or off a Talbot, and Smith is wide open in front of the net and buries that easy garbage goal. So it's 2-1 Minnesota. Okay, that sucks, but I still hate Trent Frederick for that. I wrote on here, Frederick... Oh, man, yeah, I probably won't like Trent Frederick. I'll probably like everybody else in the Bruins, but not Trent Frederick. He's just... At 1:56, a scrum after the play ends up leading to Greenway getting a high sticking penalty. This wasn't during the scrum, but this was before it. Greenway basically tried to hit somebody along the boards. The stick went up, caught, I think, Carlo in the face. And so now the Bruins have a power play that will carry on into the second, but only 4 seconds left. Nothing comes of it, and the period ends up ending 2-1. Minnesota has the lead. And apparently, there were a lot of trades that also happened in the NHL today. You obviously had the small inklings right before the trade deadline between the Avs and the Ducks. Avs get Josh Manson. They trade away, I think it was a 2022 third-round pick, and Drew Helleson, which some Avs fans really like Drew Helleson. He already signed an entry-level contract with the Ducks. So that could be bad for the Avs, but they're going all in anyway. And then obviously Tyson Jost for Nico Sturm. I posted a video yesterday, but there were some more trades today. Rangers acquire Frank Vetrano from Florida in exchange for a 2022 fourth-round pick. Good for the Rangers. Calgary end up acquiring Calle Jarnkrok with 50% of that salary retained by Seattle. Seattle ends up getting a 2022 second-round pick, which is originally from Florida, a 2022 third-round pick, and a 2024 seventh-round pick. So good trade there, I guess. And then the big one of the day, Ben Sherratt lands in Florida. So Florida gets Ben Sherratt, 50% of that salary retained by Montreal. The Canadiens get Tyler Smilanic, a 2023 first-round pick, 2023 first-round pick, and a 2022 fourth-round pick. So couple more big trades before the trade deadline, which will be on Monday, the 21st. We'll see if anybody else from the Wild moves. I don't know. We'll see, because they were talking about it during the intermission. They Billy Guerin kind of told the Wild, hey, this one's on you. I can't bail you guys out with a bunch of trades. I'm just trying to do what's helpful for the team. But this team can win. They just need to wake up. And that is what this game was. It was a wake-up game. It was something that got the Wild back into that pre-All-Star break groove that they were in, and hopefully can carry on through the rest of the season so we can get a better spot than third in the Central. Because I'd like to get second in the Central, and I think we can, because St. Louis is not that far away. We just need to keep rolling. Anyway, second period starts, and Minnesota, I wrote here, Minnesota's playing pissed off, which they were pretty much the first and third periods. The second period is where the game kind of went into a lull. It was like I think Keith Jones described it as a snail's pace for the game. So for a good chunk of time, they were talking about Keith Jones's suit, which, okay, that's great. But, I mean, I guess there wasn't really much else to talk about in the second period, at least until after this stuff happened. Kaprizov gets a tripping or a holding penalty at 18:45, and then Brad Marchand gets a power play goal, his 24th of the season at 18:11 in the second period. I didn't write down what the assist. The assist came from Coyle and McAvoy, and I'm not sure. Let's see. It was Coyle's 19th assist of the season, and it was McAvoy's 31st of the season. Basically, Marchand fired a shot from the skull. He fired a shot from the high slot, and this is a shot that, frankly, Talbot should have had, but also he shouldn't have been screened in front. But he wasn't screened by a Boston player. No. He was screened by Matt Dumba. Dumba came slowly gliding in and just stood in front long enough for Talbot to somehow lose sight of the puck, and it's tied 2-2. So the building starts to get quiet. Everybody's starting to panic, but eventually the game, like I said, just slowly moves into a lull. It just kind of becomes lackluster for a little bit. And at that point, for Marchand's goal, 3 of the last 4 shots in the entire game had gone in the net. That is how absurd that weird flurry of goals was. Also noticed Nordy, he was in the St. Paddy's Day gear. He had the jersey on the back. He was looking good. The officials, again, miss another too many men call on Boston. So I guess they weren't calling that penalty today. Okay, that's fine. Then at 11:42, Craig Smith gets a slashing penalty. And Minnesota was 1 for 2 on the power play. Did not generate anything from this. This did not turn into anything. Because, again, they never could gain the ozone. They had too many turnovers. And that's kind of been the problem throughout that whole losing streak. Way too many turnovers and inability to hold the puck into the zone. Just never really tried anything. Bruins get a shorthanded chance where it hits the post. It beats Talbot cleanly, right over his shoulder, hits the post, and bounced out. Which I wrote afterwards, Talbot scares me because he gives up some stuff like this, and it makes you cringe whenever there's a chance like this, because I feel like I don't have faith in him, and I don't really have faith in Kakinen either. But again, I feel like it's just a confidence issue. So I'm really trying to have faith in Talbot, and faith was a little bit restored in the third period. But continuing with the second, I wrote McAvoy's a thug, mainly because he just was getting under the guys' skin, and he made a couple cheap plays on Kaprizov. Specifically, he lays a nice clean hit to Kaprizov, and then afterwards just decides to shove him more and more for no reason. So that's why I did not like McAvoy at all. And yeah, at 7:43, I wrote literally just talking about Jonesy's tie and suit. And that's all it devolved to. Even Kenny Albert didn't bother to just stop the guys. He just kept commenting. They said Jonesy had trouble getting over the boards, blah, 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 blah. But the game was at a snail's pace. Nothing was really happening. There were a lot of face-offs, kind of just back and forth, like almost a tennis match at that point. Nobody really tried to do anything. At some point, Brad Marchand tried to hit Greenway. He literally tried to hit Greenway. Literally, leading into this, Brad Marchand jock checks Jordan Greenway, just stick right in between his legs, and then tries to go after a hit on Greenway, which, it's like, you can't. It's Jordan Greenway to Brad Marchand. It is a grown man to a toddler. It is not a fair fight. But, I mean, if Marchand's willing to, get his ass kicked, that's fine by me. And then things really started to pick up in the second period. It really started to get chippy. A lot more scrums, a lot more fighting. It was just, it was getting nasty. It was getting a playoff atmosphere. But that was the end of the second. By that point, there were way too many turnovers for Minnesota. Very evident of how they had been playing in the last 15 games. They had just not looked like they had been before. So, the shots on goal in that, Boston was up 17-15 by the end of the second. So then we moved to the third period, where Minnesota finally started to get their groove back. It was looking pretty even to start off, and Minnesota, again, still applying pressure, but also not really going fully invested in the game. Not quite. Took a little bit of time to get that, and that might have changed at 15:33 when Eriksson Ek and Charlie Coyle get reacquainted, and McAvoy keeps doing the cheap shit he, keeps doing. Kaprizov ends up pickpocketing Marchand on one of these plays, gets a shot off, doesn't lead into anything, but it's still more offensive zone time for Minnesota. They're starting to get back into the play. They're starting to roll from Minnesota. And then Minnesota, right around the 13-minute mark, Minnesota just starts to throw a lot of pucks on net and just buzzes. They buzz around that zone. They go nuts. Multiple shots. They continue to keep the puck in the zone. The Bruins are tired. They're chasing after pucks, trying to get something out of the zone. Minnesota just keeps grabbing it down, throwing it back in. Eventually, there's some sort of scrum in front. Puck kicks out, and they keep firing, keep throwing around the circle. Finally, the puck ends up with Jared Spurgeon at the point. He fires a shot on net. People are falling down, but Jordan Greenway, right in front of the net, buries a garbage goal as he's falling down. It is 3-2 Minnesota. The building loses their mind. And I was losing my mind too, because if any of my roommates were actually here, I don't think they were. That's why it was good for me this time. But if they were here, they probably would have come banging on my door and telling me to shut up, because I was losing it. That is a huge goal. That's Greenway's 6th of the season. At 12:04 left in the third period, assist from Spurgeon, his 23rd of the season, and Goligoski, his 27th of the season. Again, a scrum in front. Spurgeon fires a shot from the point. Greenway gets a garbage rebound, and it's a clutch goal. It's a big goal for Minnesota, because that might just be the thing we need to get rolling, to get bouncing, to get some momentum back, and to get away from Nashville, who is still just clinging to our heels like a leech. They won't go away. And ironic here, it's the loudest I've ever heard shout from the Minnesota Wild fans, because we all know the controversy. Well, you should bring back crowd chant. And I'm not against that. But I'm also saying that shout is still a good goal song anyway. It's not that bad. It's fun. It gets people on their feet. But a lot of people were able to get into this one and were able to just let loose and just scream, because they know that goal was massive for Jordan Greenway and for the Minnesota Wild, because they started to dominate the rest of this game. The Bruins just looked lost for the rest of the third period. They just looked dead in the water almost. And Minnesota was just able to take over. They didn't need to score anymore, but they just kept dominating those 50-50 battles. Any puck possession, Minnesota was rolling. Shots at one point, at 10:17, shots were 15-6 in favor of the Wild in the third period. That is how much Minnesota juiced from that goal. They were rolling. They were absolutely rolling. And that is also the point where I learned that Jost is wearing the bubble because he has a broken jaw, and where I learned that he is red-green colorblind, which... Did they not do the research? I mean, I don't think it will really hinder him. I don't think it's going to be that bad. But still, you're red-green colorblind and you're playing for a team that is red and green. If you miss... Oh, jeez. Oh, man. Well, he has an excuse, I guess. He has an excuse. You can't blame him for that. But if there is a cure for red-green colorblindness, or like some sort of visor that he can wear that can help him out, please implement that. That would really help him out. I'm assuming so. And at 4:42, there's a skirmish between Merrill and Smith. Both of them end up getting thrown in the box, because at this point the refs had to take control of the game. It was getting really chippy and just rough. There was a lot of cheap stuff being thrown in. McAvoy, again, doing more cheap stuff. I still like McAvoy, but not as much after this game. Because he still looks like a child, if I'm going to be honest. But Merrill and Smith end up getting thrown in the box because they have to take somebody. So they take both guys to make it fair. It's 4-on-4. Boston, again, tries to get more momentum going, and they can't. They just cannot find a way to get anything going. They call their timeout. They pull Swayman really late, which was weird for me. I would have thought make it a 5-on-4, make it a power play during that 4-on-4, but they don't. They pull him. Let's see. They decide to pull Jeremy Swayman very late with a minute 10 left. They pulled Jeremy Swayman with only a minute 10 left. And the Wild just, throughout that entire time, Boston was never able to get a shot on net. They were never able to get any zone time. And all Ryan Hartman has to do is just pickpocket David Pastrnak and bury the puck into an empty net with 4 seconds left. And that ends the game. That puts the Minnesota Wild back in the win column. It's an aggressive win. It's a clutch win. Shots finished out. Minnesota beat Boston in shots 34-26. And with that win, we now move back into third in the Central because we still have a game in hand ahead of Nashville. New record now becomes 35-20-4, or 74 points is what we have. The next game we have is Saturday, 2 Eastern versus Chicago, and it's on NHL Network. So I need to find a way to actually see NHL Network because all I have is ESPN and TNT on a Roku TV, but no actual way to watch NHL Network. So I'm going to have to find a way to figure that out. But it's still a big win for Minnesota, and one they desperately needed. So again, like this video, subscribe if you want to see more. I'm still covering the Wild throughout the rest of the season, no matter where this team throws me as far as my sanity levels go. They're keeping me in a good spot right now. This was a good win. This was a good win to have. But as always, I'll see you guys in the next Wild video, and peace.